He's mine now. You'll never get your claws on him again.
Hello, and welcome to the Twilight Pwn, the internet's third most popular Twilight Zone podcast. My name is John. I'm joined by my co-host, Fred.
Hello.
Good morning, Fred. Did I wake you up? So, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing good. Yep.
What's the latest crazy TZ gossip you got over there in
Actually,
Brooklyn?
there was some gossip today. Listeners, if you tuned into our episode last week on Long Distance Call, we played a fan-made jingle to open up the episode. And
Yes.
Normally our sort of like jingle chanteuse is a mutual friend of ours named Gretchen. And she texted me today kind of like incensed, thinking that we had like hired somebody else to sing a jingle. And there was like mad drums for about 5 minutes before I cleared it up.
I'm glad I'm not on the receiving end of that.
Yeah.
I'm also glad that I was able to figure out what chanteuse meant from context clues, because definitely never heard that one before.
What have you been up to this week?
It was St. Patrick's Day. I don't think we really celebrated it all because it was too chilly. So, I don't know.
The Wild Adventures. It was St. Patrick's Day, but we didn't celebrate because it was 50 degrees.
Basically.
Yeah, no, I hear you. St. Patrick's Day at this point is kind of boiled down to like me wearing a green shirt and my mom texting me Aaron go brah. But I enjoy that. I'm always happy to do those two things. Anyway, let's get down to business. What episode are we talking about this week?
This week we'll be discussing A Young Man's Fancy. This is a third season episode. It was the 99th of the production run. It aired originally on May 11th, 1962.
You're looking at the house of the late Mrs. Henrietta Walker. This is Mrs. Walker herself, as she appeared 25 years ago. And this, except for isolated objects, is the living room of Mrs. Walker's house, as it appeared in that same year. The other rooms upstairs and down are much the same. The time, however, is not 25 years ago, but now. The house of the late Mrs. Henrietta Walker is, you see, a house which belongs almost entirely to the past. A house which, like Mrs. Walker's clock here, has ceased to recognize the passage of time. Only one element is missing now. One remaining item in the estate of the late Mrs. Walker. Her son, Alex, 34 years of age and up till 20 minutes ago, the so-called perennial bachelor. With him is his bride, the former Miss Virginia Lane. They're returning from the city hall in order to get Mr. Walker's clothes packed, make final arrangements for the sale of the house, lock it up, and depart on their honeymoon. Not a complicated set of tasks, it would appear, and yet the newlywed Mrs. Walker is about to discover that the old adage, "You can't go home again,"
Just keep going.
has little meaning in the Twilight Zone.
This is funny. For a remarkably simple setup, there's quite a lot of explaining.
Pretty basic here, Fred. Yeah, I think this might be the longest one. I mean,
I'm pretty
it's
sure
like close to 2 minutes long. It's up there. I mean, It's a Good Life one is pretty darn long.
But yeah, this one's up there. And to add on to the pile, we like to do our own Serling-style intros. The stupid high concept one, does that person go first or second?
Yeah, we normally let that one go.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, that's me.
Assuming it crashes and burns, we try and get those out of the way.
Okay. A safe assumption. All right, here we go. You've heard the rumors about Binghamton's most terrifying haunted house. This Halloween season, it's time to find out for yourself what lies beyond the doors of Henrietta Walker Manor. If you dare take exit 64 off the Beltway, you'll see the grandfather clock that works intermittently, the radio that plays big band music, and the terrifying sight of outdated kitchen appliances. And oh yes, did we mention the fudge where before there wasn't fudge? Tickets are available at www.henriettawalkermansion.com for a nominal processing fee. Minors must be accompanied by an adult. Now stay tuned for the Twilight Zone.
I wish you'd given me a heads up. I would have found like a or something to play.
we can lay it in
Halloween
in
effects.
post.
Really, would have made that pop.
Yeah.
It was good stuff.
I will say it was kind of fun to like do some quote-unquote research for that bit, just like listening to various like local haunted house ads on YouTube. There's definitely some gems. I also stumbled across this really funny guy who like does reviews of haunted houses, and he's like really sarcastic. So most of his videos are just him like wandering through a haunted house going like, "Oh wow, that's so scary." Bizarre concept for a niche reviewer.
Interesting, yes. I know we once watched a documentary on people who do the like big haunted house things, like people who've like taken their own house, and it's kind of like gateway drugs. Like it starts out with, you know, oh, they're kind of going a little overboard on the yard decorations.
Yeah.
And next thing you know, like they have warehouses filled with props and stuff.
Yeah, no, I can imagine how that kind of like Breaking Bad. It starts off small and then pretty soon.
I will say for all our Austin listeners, the House of Torment that they bring out every Halloween, it's pretty darn impressive. I mean, it costs like $30 or something to get in, but you know, it's kind of worth it for how ridiculously over the top they go. I'd say there's some like B- level movie production design going on in some of these places. It's pretty impressive.
Pretty darn impressive. B- movie production.
I mean, it's not like Interstellar, but you know, it's like a better than like a really crappy sci-fi movie, somewhere in the middle.
Better than a really all right, let's hear yours.
Okay. Enter Virginia Walker née Lane, the blushing bride and her buxom beau Alex Walker, the gallant groom. Theirs was a sparsely attended affair, the young couple, the county clerk, and several onlookers online to get their hunting licenses renewed. The matron of honor missed the matrimony when she was waylaid at the mortuary. The OG Mrs. Walker is now the ODEAD Mrs. Walker. Or is she? Virginia Walker is about to learn that DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince's 80s classic Parents Just Don't Understand gets rather infrequent airplay on the hip-hop radio stations in the Twilight Zone.
That was very
pandering. It's like maybe a reference could get a laugh. I don't know.
No, I liked Dead. That was enjoyable. Well, anyway, this is the third season episode of the Twilight Zone. We are about to spoil it in its entirety, so check it out beforehand if you want to avoid that. It's available on Hulu, Netflix, and you can buy the Blu-rays and DVDs. But we are going to spoil it, so you have been warned. So yeah, the episode opens pretty plainly. Serling is basically talking from the very first moment the camera turns on, and he's laying out the circumstances for us. It's the house of this woman, Henrietta Walker. She's deceased. And we see a picture of her. She looks kind of like an upscale lady. She's got sort of like an old-fashioned upscale house.
Yes, I had to wonder, do you keep a nice, prominent 8x10 of yourself on your coffee table?
No comment. Is that just
or was that like a 60s piece of, design on a dime tip that, like, maybe isn't used as much now?
Yeah.
It's bold. It's aggressive.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, she apparently had a son named Alex who arrives to this house with his new bride, whose name is yeah?
Let's not skip over when Rod is explaining all this. Did you notice? I think Rod does what I would say is his first bit of acting.
Oh yeah, this is kind of crazy. Like as the young couple pulls up, or they're really not that young anymore, but as the couple,
yeah, that's another thing.
Let's get there. As the couple pulls up and starts walking up the walkway to the front door, Serling kind of like peeps at them.
He's talking to the audience and he's kind of like, check this out. Yeah. He wanders over to the window and he kind of gives him a little peep and he comes back. This is like high level acting for him.
Yeah, something about like the fact that he's smoking a cigarette while he does it too just really lends it kind of like a voyeurism type of. It feels more like a stakeout than an episode of the Twilight Zone.
It definitely had a prank vibe at the least. Maybe stakeout, maybe like a punked. Like he's just like, yeah, we're gonna get these guys good. Yeah.
There's something about how they walk in right after he just finished a cigarette too. They're like, why does it smell like smoke in here, honey? Right. Anyway, so the couple is Alex and Virginia. They just got married at City Hall, and they're arriving at this house, Alex's mother's house, to get some things and finalize the paperwork for it to be sold, so they can finally move on with their wonderful lives.
Right.
Serling,
And now it must be said they probably don't have much of their wonderful lives left.
Well, here, Serling says that Alex is 34. And as someone who is 33, soon to be turned 34, I was like, whoa. I have to look at myself in the mirror. Because if that is what I look like, Jesus.
That didn't really register with me because I just made the note, like, are they 50? Like, they're old. But, I mean, it's part of that weird spectrum of 50s and 60s. But even on that spectrum, I was like, they're on the back half. They look old. It became clear as their backstory was more revealed that they're, really shooting for that. I don't know. If someone gets married at 33 or 34, it's like, okay, whatever. But I don't know. In the 60s, I guess you have to portray them as like about to die.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, well, you think of
these freaks.
Yeah, well, and people did marry younger then. I mean, they still marry younger than that now, but like, I don't know what they were. It's very confusing because the actor who plays Alex is 46 years old, but he's supposed to be 34. So there's like this weird.
And I'd say he looks like an old 46. Yeah, exactly. I mean, he's not like a spry 46.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just very, very confusing right off the bat. But anyway, they're getting ready to pack up some things before they leave for their honeymoon. They seem pretty happy at first, but the first tiff of the marriage breaks out when Alex starts getting sort of cold feet about what to keep and what to get rid of.
Darling, I thought we'd decided to discuss all that after the house was sold.
Sold? I know, but I just thought that maybe we should decide now. I mean, like in the kitchen, for instance. We'll take the refrigerator and the stove. They're pretty new. I just bought them for Mother a few months before she died.
Do you get the feeling that maybe they had like a celebratory martini or something with that line reading? We will take the refrigerator out and she died.
Baby, cheers, we're married.
My buddy Jerry here had a very interesting thing the other day.
I think I think I have an explanation for it. As the episode progresses, like it becomes clear that something is some power is coming over Alex, and I think he's trying to like express that like he's being pulled in different directions, but it just sounds like he's being pulled by a couple of Heinekens into like a sort of slurry way of speaking. But they're deciding about are we going to keep this, keep that. Alex goes over to this old radio in the living room and he starts waxing nostalgic about it, how they'd listen to old podcasts on it. There's a couple like little references he tosses out to old-timey radio shows.
The programs we used to hear on this. Major Bose, Fred Allen, and all the music. We used to sit in here all the time listening to music. Mother's favorite was Eddie Duchin. I just remembered. She used to be crazy about a record of his called The Lady in Red. You remember that? Mm-hmm. The Lady in Red. All the fellas are crazy for the Lady in Red.
Those are real shows, the Fred Allen.
Yeah, there was like they were hitting us with a ton of references right there.
Yeah. To jump ahead to trivia is that this episode is written by Richard Matheson, and some of those shows that he mentions are actually referenced in another Richard Matheson penned episode called Static, which we haven't covered yet. So that's kind of like a cute little inside Richard Matheson joke. But Eddie Duchin's also was a real crooner, and there really was a song called The Lady in Red. Did you bother YouTubing it?
No, it just made me want to listen to Lady in Red.
Wait, who's that?
Is dancing with me. Fred, come on. Cheek to cheek.
Wait, what is this?
You don't know this song?
No.
This is like Krista Berg. I can't believe... Fred, come on.
What? Don't be mad at me. It's
not Avante Popolo, but come on, this is like a big. I
don't know. Things. Like I know like stupid, indie bands that 5 people went to one of their shows in Brooklyn one time, and I know everything about them, but I don't know Lady in Red. What is that?
I think you would know. I don't know.
Just play it. Play
like
it on your computer. Let's hear it.
Yeah, just Google Lady in Red. It's the first result.
I don't know. It just sounds like the 80s to me in a generic way.
Well, you're not even getting to the hook. This is Lady in Red.
All right. Let's move on.
They made a Gene Wilder movie out of it.
They made a Gene Wilder movie out of it, Fred.
Come on.
Have you no decency, sir? Look, I don't know anything. Let's move along.
All right.
Anyway, the conversation between Alex and Virginia kind of peters out, and he goes upstairs to pack up his army men. And we get kind of a weird moment where Alex's wife confronts the studio portrait of her mother-in-law, and delivers kind of like a WWE call-out to her. It's kind of... Was that the clip you played at the very beginning?
Yeah,
Let's just hear it again.
It's pretty short.
He's mine now. You'll never get your claws on him again.
Oh, yeah!
You'll never get your 26-inch pythons. It's later on, that becomes more justified. There's history there, but it's a little bit like, oh, I see.
Yeah. Meow.
Yeah, exactly. And as a response to this, the radio very suddenly turns on. The old radio, which was supposedly broken, turns on, and it's playing that classic Krista Berg song, "Lady in Red." Krista Berg, what a horrible name for a pop star. Krista Berg. Anyway, let's move along. So next up, we see Alex in his childhood room listening to an old record, which actually is Lady in Red. Although for some reason on the record label, the props department put Lady Be Good on the Victrola, so it's a very confusing, disorienting moment. But whatever, it's Lady in Red. And he's playing with some
a country lady out of New Orleans. So sorry.
You're no Eddie
Go. Go, lady, go.
Anyway, he's playing with some old toys, and we also see...
He also has the prominent 8x10 on a low table.
Yeah.
It's like the fashion in their house.
Yeah, it's weird. It was clearly shot during the same portrait session as the one with the mom, and both of them have this weird, they look like Terry Richardson photographs. They don't really look like... They're taken against black or blank backgrounds with a really intense flash so that you really see them clearly. You know what I mean?
I didn't know that I knew who Terry Richardson is. I just had to Google that one to understand what you're talking about. But now I'm like, oh yeah, that guy.
Yeah,
okay,
that annoying guy.
That one.
Yeah. But do you know what I mean? Overexposed. It just... The Twilight Zone constantly does this. Is when there's a photograph that's supposed to be used for a plot reason, it's like they just take it against a white background so that there's no confusing. This is here for the plot.
Did you notice this was giving me a little bit of a vibe of a prior episode?
The Hardy Boys in Secret of the Caves. Bill Bolton in Hidden Dangers.
Tarzan and the Anthem. Tarzan and the Jewels of Opar.
Alex, please.
Remember these? Funny old things.
Alex.
Oh, and the stockings that went with them. Stockings for a boy. Takes a real boy to know a real stocking.
Knickers!
Especially if he wants to play Ring Alivio in them. Yeah, little shades of Horace Ford there. I do think it's the same thing of an actor, trying to portray himself as someone being drawn back into childhood, and again, it's kind of weird. It kind of doesn't seem right. And it leads to kind of a fight between the two of them. Alex's wife, Virginia, suggests that his mom wanted to infantilize him and, kept his room looking exactly like it was when he was a boy to sort of deliberately, keep him under her control. And they have a fight about it, and Alex kind of storms off and completely justifies the fight because he goes into his mother's bedroom to have a little heart-to-heart with another 8x10 portrait that she keeps by her bedside. Which is even weirder now that I think about it.
It's like a Harry Potter universe now.
It's really weird. It's like, why do I keep such a large photograph of myself right on my nightstand?
Exactly.
Anyway, meanwhile, Virginia goes downstairs and she sees what we are alerted to by the filmmaking is supposed to be a very shocking moment, which is that the grandfather clock is ticking.
Yeah.
I had completely lost control of the functionality of I just didn't remember. I was like, is that good? Who, what, when, why, and good or bad? I did not know what was going on there.
I did get it, but I did understand, but I did also have the note, that just a working clock doesn't hit me quite as hard as something. I get exactly what they were aiming for, but it's like, I don't know. Could an old clock just kind of kick on?
Exactly,
and maybe
I know, it doesn't have quite the same impact of like Freddy falling through the ceiling or whatever. Anyway, it's a
very, very slow burn, Fred.
The grandfather clock has completed its transformation into a mother-in-law clock, and it's working, and that's very shocking, and we cut to commercial. And when we get back, we've got a realtor character arriving to sort of handle the signing over of the house so that he can sell it. Did you think Mr. Wilkinson was like an unnecessarily bad actor, or like trying to make too much hay out of this very small character?
I guess in relation to the others, I didn't. Oh, go ahead.
He tries to sell this like catchphrase. He's like, "Fine and dandy," and it's kind of like, we're not going to remember you, buddy. You're not going to be the thing we remember about this episode. So they're going to sign the papers. It has to be Alex because he's the one who owns the house. They're going to do it in the dining room. But he starts to get some cold feet before putting pen to paper. And at the last minute, he decides he's not going to sell the house. He kind of puts it off like, oh, we'll do it after we get back from our honeymoon. And Mr. Wilkinson is a little cheesed about it.
Real estate guy doesn't have the best poker face. He kind of gives like a pretty big look of disgust before, cleaning up his face and being like, oh, all right, great. I'll come back.
Fine and dandy. It doesn't really matter because he's gone. And
never to be seen again.
Yeah, and it gets worse because not only does Alex not want to sell the house, he decides he wants to live in it, which is something that Virginia very much is not down with. And we get some backstory at this point because Virginia starts yelling at him. And
I've actually got a couple of these. They just start dumping info on us pretty hard. And I feel like this episode kind of goes, it's like a little too subtle. There's clearly stuff going on, but it's all unsaid. It's very Hemingway.
Sure. The hills like
white elephants up until this point where we're like, all right, here's your damn backstory.
I mean, couldn't we live here, Virg? It's a pretty nice house.
Alex, no.
Well, don't just say no without even thinking about it. We could redecorate a little.
I want to get out of here. I want to leave. Right now. Alex, you promised me when your mother died you'd sell this house. Well, she's dead. Alex dead. She's been dead for a year now. And I waited that year and all the years before. 12 years. 12 long years of waiting for you. Now I want my own home. I have a right to that.
It's kind of insane to imagine someone being together for 12 years in the 50s and not getting married. Like, that just doesn't seem...
Yeah.
That's, like, less plausible than the grandfather clock. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
Well, the character would have been 22 when they met. I mean, I guess it's possible, but it's just like a little like,
Really, we'll get married next year for 12 years thing.
Yeah.
Like, I figure like around year 7, you start getting a little antsy.
Yeah, especially given the time period. That seems a little unrealistic, but whatever. Maybe he's really good in bed. Anyway, moving on.
I think that's the subtext.
Yes.
So we got a little more info dump here.
I love you. I want to care for you and make a home for you. But our home, not hers. We've waited so long, darling.
Oh.
I know you told me she was sick and we couldn't.
She was sick, Virg. She lost her health taking care of me in this house for more than 20 years. My father deserted us when I was 2 months old, Virg. 2 months old.
All right. Let's go. Let's get out of here.
Virg. I'm not going to sell the house, Virg. We'll have it redecorated, maybe get some new furniture. We'll talk about it later.
I can't imagine being able to end arguments that way. It'd be amazing.
Yeah. It's
nope,
over.
Gonna do it my way. Sorry. We talked for a little while. I'm tired of that. See ya.
Yeah. Anyway, after that, Alex heads upstairs to pout. And as the fight kind of escalated to this point where at some point we cut over to the mother-in-law clock again, which continues to tick, which is, I guess, bad.
Yeah,
and
still terrifying.
So when she's alone, Virginia starts freaking out a bit because she keeps bumping into reminders of the past, including a nice little cameo by a still photograph of Carol Lombard on a copy of Screen Digest magazine. It's another one of these things where you're like, it's very hard to be shocked by something that's like a reminder of the past from the past. Because you're like, oh, would Carol Lombard have been passé by that point? And then the moment is gone. It's
I just feel like there's going to be like a movie set in 2005, and there'll be a magazine with like Anna Nicole Smith on it, and people are going to be like, I think this is about right.
Yeah, totally.
Close enough.
Yeah. But it doesn't end there. It keeps escalating and escalating until sort of in the most terrifying moment, some fudge appears in a fudge dish.
My note, prep the censor bleep, my note was fudge.
This episode it's such a masterpiece of non-scary, scary signifiers,
Exactly.
It's like, what was Spielberg's famous thing in Jaws? Show your audience as little of the fudge as possible. So when you break out the dish at the end, it really has the impact.
I don't know. It's like, something about making it an alluring, delicious treat. I'm just so conflicted. I know I'm supposed to be scared, but I'm just like,
that looks good.
It's good-looking fudge.
Apparently things are no better in the kitchen. And Virginia dashes in there, and the stove and fridge are maybe older than they were before.
But they might have just been outdated, and we weren't paying close attention. Because
I question whether whether even a '60s audience would have noticed that. Because it's like if you showed me now a fridge that was from 1995, I wouldn't be like, oh my God.
I mean, well, like they keep hanging their hat on the telephone being old, but it's just like, but she was an old lady.
Yeah, like
I guess I think there was a more current telephone, but like, am I just looking at a different phone that's old that she kept around? I don't know. We keep old crap lying around for some reason.
Yeah, I know.
It's just one where intellectually I get all these scares, but I'm not willing to go with any of them.
But that's the final one, or at least the final inanimate object scare. Because at this point, Virginia runs back into the stairwell or whatever, and she's going to run up and get Alex, but we see the ghost of the mother dressed exactly like she was conveniently for her glamour shot. The mother says, like, you can't have him back, and there's some hot and heavy dialogue here.
You can't have him. I won't let you have him. He's mine now. Mine. Yes, he is. Because I'm right for him. I won't try to destroy him like you did. My love will make him strong. Not weak. Not dependent. Yes, it's true. You always known it's true. And you hated me for it. Well, your hatred isn't strong enough now. Your desire to dominate him isn't strong enough. It's not your little boy anymore. Leave him be. You will not have him back.
This is not my doing.
Ooh. Dun, dun, dun.
Did you notice in this moment there's a pretty amazing bit where the woman is having her big emotional showdown, but the tears, they just aren't coming, and they cut away from her, and then they cut back, and she's got like huge glycerine streaks all over.
No, I missed that. It's like her face is completely wet.
It's pretty awesome.
No, that's a good
It's like great she got them flowing off camera. Good job. She's a pro.
Yeah. But the mother kind of drops that bombshell of like, this isn't my doing. Yeah. It's that guy over there's doing. And we cut away, and it's not 34/46/66-year-old Alex in the doorway.
It's 8-year-old /15-year-old Alex.
/22-year-old Alex.
Right.
Can we go to the park and then to the zoo and have 2 ice cream cones? Oh, boy.
Oh, boy.
Well, luckily, I know we don't have a lot of episodes left, but we got something to add to our little arsenal just in case.
Oh, boy.
Oh, boy. Virginia goes after him. He's like, we don't need you, lady. And then she takes a hint and dashes out of the house, and we get Serling.
Exit Miss Virginia Lane. Formally and most briefly, Mrs. Alex Walker. She has just given up a battle and in a strange way retreated. But this has been a retreat back to reality. Her opponent, Alex Walker, will now and forever hold a line that exists in the past. He has put a claim on a moment in time and is not about to relinquish it. Such things do happen in the Twilight Zone.
Yes, Serling implies there that the divorce will go smoothly. What do you put down on the sheet? Is it just like irreconcilable differences, or?
Yeah, I think that's got to be it.
Yeah. So I feel like last week we had an episode of the Twilight Zone where it was like, this is a long distance call where you had a family dynamic, like a grandmother who loved her grandson maybe a little bit too much. And it works really well. It like takes that and twists it so that it becomes dark and Twilight Zone-y. And here we have like a similar dynamic at play, but it kind of doesn't work as well. It's not as good of an episode, and it comes across as more kind of cheesy and silly than ominous and dark. Why is that? Is it just because like it's the son is like a grown man, so it just seems wackier that he's regressing like that?
Say why the episode doesn't work. I feel like there's maybe more than one specific thing.
Let's just say the concept. I mean, obviously, like relying on a plate of fudge to be your big scare moment is a problem. But like, assuming everything was done really well and this was directed by like Wes Craven, like I still think it would be a little bit.
Well, yeah, something about putting like a small child in jeopardy, especially at the clutches of a supposed to be loving, but the love is twisted.
Yeah,
Granny is just more. Then it starts to feel almost like a archetypal, like fairy tale vibe to it. Whereas this is just like, I don't know, it's so like Freudian or not Freudian, Oedipal, like mama's boy thing to it. It's like already a little like, you're a little leery of it. Like, someone who's like a serious mama's boy just doesn't make a great protagonist that you want. I mean, I guess the wife is much more the protagonist. She's kind of like uncovering what's happening.
I guess it's just like you don't want the protagonist to achieve her goal because you kind of just annoyed at this guy, you know what I mean? So that makes it a little bit of a sort of more of a muddle of an episode. Like you get the feeling that like all things being equal, this is kind of a happy ending because she dodged a bullet and
right, totally. And it's not like Bluebeard and his wives. Like when she gets to the shocking twist at the end, it's just kind of like, oh yeah, it's like you said, like great, okay, I'm gonna go out and find someone else. I'm not sure about the premise. To jump into trivia, Matheson didn't like this episode, but he felt it was more an issue of casting. He thought that they kind of blew, that the mother should have been more scary and menacing, but she just kind of stands there. But I mean, frankly, I think like I was so checked out because I felt like all the scare beats weren't working. So
you said it's like Freudian or Oedipal. I mean, it's weird. I give it credit for playing in like complicated waters. Like, this is a weird subject, like someone who can't let go of their childhood and someone who is kind of like, too fixated on their mother. Like that's a Psycho is kind of like that in some ways, but they just don't pull it off. I don't know, like maybe it is more in the execution than the concept. I don't know.
I guess that's kind of a thing, the Twilight Zone writ large. You have so many of these episodes where a person gets to go back to their childhood for a bit, and sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad.
Well, it's almost never good in the way that they think it's going to be good. You know what I mean?
Sure. The twist they're building up to is the fiance, Virginia, believes this is all going to boil down to a big confrontation with the big evil mom. But it turns out, the mom wasn't the bad person. It was the husband who was, giving her the power and all. But that's another thing where like it feels like it should have some weight to that twist, but at that point I'm just so like, bleh.
Yeah.
Like,
it was him who put the fudge there.
Right.
What we doing next?
Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Bios and trivia. Yeah. Mark Scott, Siegfried, Mark Grams Jr., Siegfried and Grams, and IMDb.
I did find this kind of interesting. So I often consult Mark Scott Zickry's Twilight Zone companion when preparing for these episodes. His layout, he always includes the full write-up of Serling's intro and outro, and in between he does a little summary. I thought it was slightly amusing that Serling's intro ran for 15 lines, whereas the recap ran for 9 lines.
Yeah, exactly.
So, that's another thing that's just kind of, I don't feel like there's a lot of meat in this episode.
Yeah.
Like, there's just kind of constantly looking at, appliances that have changed for like 10 minutes of it. There really wasn't a whole lot of interesting trivia. Yeah, so I ended up down a little bit of a rabbit hole and just ended up on, I believe, the wiki entry for Mama's Boy, which said, a mother's boy may be effete or effeminate, or might be perceived as being macho, or might have a personality disorder, such as avoidant personality disorder, or might be schizophrenic, so that the mother acts as a caretaker. I just felt like that's a big tent.
Yeah. It might be a person.
Mama's Boys comes. Yeah, it might be. All shapes and sizes. So I didn't have really any other interesting trivia.
Martin Grimm's Jr.'s book doesn't have too much. There's some talk about how that song "The Lady in Red" by Eddie Duchin, or at least made famous by Eddie Duchin, Matheson said either use that song or using one by this other guy. Like, I don't even think Matheson even knew that was a real song. I think he was just kind of like dipping into his memory and pulling out a random title. But it is a real song, and it is, they did a new arrangement of it for the episode. But they couldn't get the record in time to use it as a prop when Alex is listening to it. So it's "Lady Be Good." I think I mentioned that in the episode. That's kind of interesting. There was also a confusing little bit talking about how Matheson submitted the episode with a different intro and Serling rewrote it, which is just another weird little clue in this continued game of trying to figure out who wrote Serling's intros and outros, because I feel like sometimes we hear that it was always Serling and sometimes we hear that they were written by the writers, and I think maybe the writers would do a first draft and Serling would kind of sprinkled some Serling dust on it if he felt it needed it, and I think this one indeed did need it, a lot of it, apparently 15 lines worth of it. But that's all I got from Graham's. What about bios?
Phyllis Thaxter played Virginia Walker. She possibly most famously played Ma Kent in Richard Donner's Superman. Wallace Rooney played Mr. Wilkinson. He was also in His Image and the Rip Van Winkle caper. Ricky Kellman played Alex Walker, age 10.
Okay.
Now, this is from the IMDb page. I can't verify this, but at the August 3rd, 2007 meeting of Der Auspuff, the Porsche Club of America, Santa Barbara region, at the Camarillo Airport, Patty McCourt was introduced as a prospective member. She and her husband, Richard Kellman, drove a 2007 Porsche Boxster to the meeting.
What?
Thank you, IMDb.
That's on IMDb?
Apparently, the child actor. Apparently, the child actor left acting and became an attorney, and his wife joined a Porsche club.
What? Why do we care? Apparently, on November 17th, they ordered takeout Chinese. Scallion
this
pancakes.
Is like Spotlight. The public has a right to know.
Yeah, I guess.
You got to get it out there.
Jeez.
All right. Written by Richard Matheson, directed by John Bram. This closes out the Bram Oeuvre, so we should discuss how this sits in that.
The canon.
So here's the list. Yeah, the canon. Here's the list of episodes. Queen of the Nile, You Drive, The New Exhibit.
Oh, John Bram. Go ahead.
Young Man's Fancy here. Person or Persons Unknown. Now here I'm going to surprise you. Shadow Play.
Oh.
But then I'm going to not surprise you. Mr. Dingle the Strong. A Nice Place to Visit, Mirror Image, The Four of Us Are Dying, Judgment Night, and big finish, Time Enough at Last.
He's got a hard catalog to judge, you know what I mean? It's as eclectic as the work of the Beatles. I mean, I would say Shadowplay as a directing thing is definitely among my favorite episodes. Just, I mean, it's among my favorite episodes in general, but I remember the directing being amazing. But then it's like, you know, you got your Dingles mixed in there.
You got You Drive, which was terribly written, but so he's run the gamut from a couple of great episodes, a couple of very middle of the road episodes, a couple of real clunkers. So it's interesting.
I think what we should do is when we have our kind of like end of the show spectacular, we should average all the scores and find out mathematically who was the best director.
Yes.
But I
I think we have a listener who might be able to help us with that.
high highs and low lows is the
Yes.
is the motto for John Brom.
Yes, so that brings us to the
Inevitable.
So we like to find connections between Mystery Science Theater 3000 and the Twilight Zone. What do we got this week, John?
This week we have two. Alex Nichol played Alex Walker. He both acted and directed a movie that was featured in, I believe, the 9th season of Mystery Science Theater 3000 called The Screaming Skull.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Wait, who was he in the movie? Was he...
I think he might have been the
he-
perv.
He wasn't Mickey?
No,
He was
wait,
Mickey?
no.
No, he wasn't Mickey.
No, he wasn't Mickey. I didn't notice this until I looked this up. Did you know there's only 5 actors in The Screaming
Oh, yeah,
Skull?
no, it's noticeably bare. It's the Reverend, his wife.
Yeah, he plays Mickey.
He plays Mickey? Oh,
He's Mickey.
Mickey. Mickey's kind of drunk the whole movie, too.
Yeah. So other information about Alex, like a lot of people in the Twilight Zone, he was a student and eventual charter member of Lee Strasberg's Actors Studio.
Okay.
The pinnacle of his Broadway career occurred when he replaced Ben Gazzara and received excellent reviews as Brick in Cat on a Hot Tin Roof.
Okay.
Helen Brown played Henrietta Walker. She was also in the 5th season movie in the 5th season called Teenage Crime Wave.
Oh, okay.
So had 2 different ones.
Cool.
All right.
What about IMDb ratings?
IMDb gives this episode a 6.6.
Pretty low.
Very low.
Very low.
Very low.
I don't think it's
Yes.
as bad as all that. Well, I guess it is as bad as all that. I don't know. I give him points for trying to do something kind of like weird and emotional and based around an interesting relationship, but they really kind of it's a bit of a snoozer, frankly. I don't know. Is it a 4-bore?
It might well be. I mean, that's
could be.
The biggest thing is I think it's supposed to be a scary episode, or at least it's supposed to have scares in it. And those just completely miss.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's dull. Beats don't land. The ending is just, I don't know. It's surprising to me to have what I consider such a weak episode come out of Matheson's pen. So I just kind of assume like maybe I'm looking at it from the wrong angle or something, but I don't know. I don't think it's very good. I feel like 4 is pretty generous because it's like, what are the good aspects of this episode?
I mean, I do think like the twist that it's Alex instead of the mom causing it is interesting. It's just at that point you're so bored you don't have the energy to care about that's interesting. But I do think like fundamentally that's kind of a cool idea.
Yeah, it's a cool idea. I agree. I just don't know if like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if it's been presented in a way to have any impact. Even
there's not much to
it's
like.
really-
That's the problem. Like it's 4-bore is kind of like, all right, they did an okay job, but like every aspect of it is kind of not that great.
Yeah, like an episode like the 30 Fathom Grave, I gave a 4-bore. Granted, it was a 4-bore plus, but you know, that was like in my mind much better than this one. It was just like overly long and dull.
Yeah.
Like this is just not engaging, and
Yeah.
the scares weren't there. It wasn't like the worst of the worst. We've seen much worse, but I feel like maybe like a 3+. Like it's aspiring to a 4-bore, but it can't quite get there.
Yeah, I was with the 3+. I'm always kind of like, what's the plus? Maybe it's the Carol Lombard cameo. I don't know. Let's go with 3+. I feel like you're on the money with that one. So that wraps it up for A Young Man's Fancy. Always a good sign when I can't remember the title of the episode after talking about it for 45 minutes. Next week, we're going to actually take a break because we have some family plans for Easter. The two of us are starting a family.
Our family will be, Eastering together.
But we'll be back the week after that with a new episode of the Twilight Zone. Getting down to our final 10 episode countdown in a couple weeks. Stay tuned and
We've saved the best for last. It's all been carefully planned, folks. I think you're gonna love our specially curated final 10 episodes.
a lot of videotaped and a lot of fourth seasoners for you guys. Get in touch with us. There's lots of ways to do it. John, what are they?
You can send us an email at twilightpwn@gmail.com. You can get in touch with us on Twitter at twilightpwn. You can check out our website, twilightpwn.tumblr.com. You can like us on Facebook. You can listen to us on any kind of podcatcher app. And you could subscribe to us in iTunes. If you're over there, if you leave us a rating or review, we really appreciate reading those.
Thanks much. So, John, Do you
Yes.
like fudge?
You know, honestly, it's not my favorite. I'm not to say that fudge, scares me or
Right,
would be
right,
terrifying
right,
if you were to give me a plate of it, but
Yeah.
it wouldn't be my most appetizing of treats.
Yeah.
As you might remember, I'm kind of more of a candy man. I like a good sweet tart, a Jolly Rancher.
Oh, yeah, you were
Nerds.
kind of like a candy man. We did call you
Strawberry
Candy
Mentos.
Man at NYU.
That's
There's
why
old
everyone called me the Candy Man.
Exactly.
How about yourself? You fudge? You a cake guy? Oh, are you a cake eater, Fred?
Schweppes drinking cake eater.
Actually, that's just a quick question. A question on your question.
Yeah.
Was cake eater an insult when you grew up as a child?
If I was watching a 50s movie, then yes, but no,
Okay.
not really. Why?
I remember when I watched Mighty Ducks and they called,
yeah,
the rich kid
right,
on the
yeah.
wrong side of the tracks cake eater, and I thought that was so weird because I'd never heard it. And then one of my closest friends ended up marrying a girl from, Minnesota, and she said, "Yeah, cake eater." Like that's.
What does that mean, though?
It just made me think, did the screenwriter spend some time around kids in Minneapolis to really get the
What does that
the
mean?
lingo?
Cake eater sounds like some sort of weird reference to Marie Antoinette.
Spoiled.
Or something like
Yeah,
that.
yes,
Like some
exactly.
weird, obscure reference.
It's like, we just eat rocks and dirt here in the middle class sections of St. Paul.
Yeah, I do think that the 80s was a really good time for insults in children's movies. The 80s, and, there's always screenwriters, probably late 30s guys who are trying to come up with hip kid slang, and it's just rat butt or weird numb nuts. What do they say? Isn't there
Rum dums.
right? Isn't there a funny insult in E.T. where they're insulting each other and one of them keeps calling the other one, it says zero charisma or whatever?
I don't even remember that. I'll talk to you later, Fred.
Talk to you next week, John. Bye.